From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where would you believe Bruce Springsteen yields an anagram of perturbing scenes? Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And speaking of Bruce Springsteen and perturbing scenes, well, here, look for yourself.
The mighty A Street Band is here tonight to call upon the righteous power of art, of music, of rock and roll in dangerous times. In my home, the America I love, the America I've written about, that has been a beacon of hope and liberty for 250 years, is currently in the hands of a corrupt, incompetent, and treasonous. Tonight, we ask all who believe in democracy and the best of our American spirit to rise with us, raise your voices against authoritarianism, and let freedom ring.
So in other words, Donald Trump wants everybody to live in the kind of America that Bruce Springsteen used to sing about, and Bruce Springsteen is fucking pissed. And this is a bit of a recurring theme for our friend Bruce, the boss to his friends, because I recall him being similarly pissed off back in 1984 when not only the listening audience, but President Ronald Reagan himself made the dreadful and unauthorized mistake of interpreting his song Born in the USA as an optimistic pro-American anthem. And Mr. Springsteen, who back then was just a cranky middle-aged millionaire as opposed to the bitter geriatric buffoon we see before us today, ambling across the stage just gingerly enough so great-grandpa's artificial hip doesn't go out of joint, well, he was pissed off about that too. Really pissed off, as a matter of fact. No, goddammit, he screamed. You will stop using that song for happy sing-alongs at Ronald Reagan rallies, you bastard. You will stop it right this instant, or I will sue. I wrote that song as an ironic statement about how much America fucking sucks and how badly we mistreat our Vietnam veterans, and I expect you to be miserable and bitter when you listen to it. So no more of this flag-waving, fist-pumping, sing-along bullshit, you understand me? This makes the boss very upset. In fact, if you're not careful, I might reemerge 3 years from now with an album named after your mom's vagina. So consider yourselves warned. Now, what was Bruce's fatal error in judgment here? Well, it was something Bob Dylan could have told him all about if he had taken the time to ask. He did really the most stupidly naive thing that an artist can ever do. Because when you transmit your song, or your movie, or your opera, or your symphony, or your painting, or your sculpture, or your video essay into the universe, you forfeit for all time your emotional and intellectual ownership of it. And I'm not talking about publishing rights and song royalties and all that nonsense. The actual crux of the matter is, you can't make your song mean the same thing to everybody else that it means to you. In fact, many times, as with Born in the USA, the listening public will ascribe a meaning to it that is completely contrary to the composer's intent. And you know what? That's what makes it art. Art is not a lecture being delivered by the artist to the consumer. Art is the two of them having a dialogue with one another. So Bruce Springsteen wrote what he thought was a depressing statement about a shitty country that treats its working people and its war veterans in a shameful manner. And he dressed it up in an arrangement and gave it a chorus that were supposed to be a mockery of the happy patriotic anthems that he regards as being such offensive jingoistic trash. And then the listening public made the awful, awful mistake of hearing it as a story about people persevering through hardship and maintaining their dignity. And how are they able to do that? Because they were born in the greatest country that Almighty God, who looks like Uncle Sam, no, goddammit, the Apollo Creed Uncle Sam, there we go, ever had the good taste to establish on the face of this earth. So it's an irony about Bruce Springsteen that Bruce Springsteen himself will likely never be introspective enough to grasp before the day they throw dirt on his dead, angry ass, that each time a president took concrete steps to bring about the America that people imagined when they listened to Bruce Springsteen songs, Bruce Springsteen completely lost his shit. And I know this is the absolute last thing he ever wants to hear, so if someone could find a way to get it from my lips to his ears, I sure would appreciate it. But to the extent that anything about Bruce Springsteen is going to be transmitted into posterity as part of our American civic religion, it will be only that song, Born in the USA, and it will play almost exclusively as the backing track to footage of Ronald Reagan defeating world communism. You're welcome. And it's America's civic religion that I'm actually here to talk about this evening. We have no state religion, of course, as most countries don't that have never had a monarchy. And to the extent that we elevate men to the status of gods and confer a sort of civic apotheosis upon them, we do that elevation and we do that conferring upon our own peers, upon Americans whose greatness and whose deeds were witnessed by their contemporaries, who then concluded that greatness and those deeds and those men's words ought to be recorded and transmitted into posterity and committed to the national consciousness. And in the monuments we raise to them, we pay homage to the great civilizations and the great leaders of the ancient past, whose successors we hope to prove ourselves worthy of being. So we raise an Egyptian obelisk to the man who won our independence on the field of battle and presided over the creation of our founding charter and then became our first and greatest chief executive. A few decades later, we raise a Greek temple to the man who preserved the Union, who in 272 words gave us a new and much better understanding of our own founding principles, and who sacrificed his life on the altar of national reconciliation. A few decades after that, we raise a Roman pantheon to a man who, at the tender age of 32, authored the instrument of our independence and went on to become not just one of the greatest and most forward-thinking presidents in our history, but the number one greatest pen and greatest mind that his country ever produced. But obviously, our national civic religion is made up of far more than marble monuments raised in honor of martial and presidential greatness. Though the presidency is indeed one of the three main tributaries that combine to form the river of our national mythology. And what are the other two? One is war, the other is baseball. And yes, I will grant you, war and the presidency are often commingled with one another, often inextricably, but I am still classifying them as separate tributaries for these purposes because it's my damn thesis and I can. But it was baseball that first got me down the mental rabbit hole of civic religion. Who are its lawgivers and its prophets? Which quotes make up its scriptural canon? And it was from the stuff that I was watching and reading about the Black Sox scandal for the episode I made the other day. Specifically the words of Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis when he proclaimed the permanent banishment of the 6 guilty men and the 2 innocent men. Words that have penetrated our national consciousness to such an extent that many of us probably know them by heart without even realizing it. Regardless of the verdict of juries, no player who throws a ball game, no player that undertakes or promises to throw a ball game, no player that sits in conference with a bunch of crooked players and gamblers for the ways and means of throwing a game are discussed and does not promptly tell his club about it will ever play professional baseball. It's short, it's sweet, it's a mere 61 words in total. There is nothing flowery about the prose. It is as plain spoken as a thing can be. And though these events only happened just barely a century ago, we have invested Judge Landis's words with a meaning and a gravity not unlike Moses on Mount Sinai. The words have transcended baseball to become something closer to scripture received from an ancient lawgiver. The entire Black Sox incident we have made into a morality play and a cautionary tale. We use it as a parable to teach kids and young adults how they should act and not act. Always play things on the level. Don't be a cheat. Don't give in to the temptation of easy money, or you might wind up like shoeless Joe Jackson. Or here's another bit of national scripture and mythology that we have gotten from the baseball field. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Henry Louis Gehrig, Yankee Stadium, July 4th, 1939. It even happened on America's birthday, for God's sake. A dying man struck down in the prime of his life, barely able to walk, had to be helped into his uniform that day, couldn't hold up the trophy they presented him with. He's got every reason to be angry at the world. And bear in mind, he is speaking to a crowd that just found out 2 weeks ago that their first baseman and team captain has a terminal illness and will likely perish within a matter of months. Up until then, they had assumed he was dealing with some persistent flu bug or something, and he would be back in the lineup soon enough. But what does he open the speech with? He opens it with grace and humility. I got to play ball for 16 years in front of all you fine people, and you've been real nice to me, so how could a fella be sore about that? And pretty much by the time he had finished the speech, that line had already been etched on the proverbial tablet of national civic scripture. My favorite thing about that speech, aside from the famous opening line, it's when Lou Gehrig gives his mother-in-law a shout-out for sometimes taking his side in domestic squabbles. I think that's just fantastic. And so, just as we have invested Judge Landis with the status of a great lawgiver in our national civic pantheon, so too have we invested Lou Gehrig with the status as one of its martyrs, a man who died in 1941 who still provides a living object lesson that you can point to and say, when life deals you a lousy break and you feel like wallowing in self-pity, act like that man instead. That is what dignity in the face of misfortune looks like. That is how Americans are supposed to act. And I'm reminded also of Game 1 of the 1918 World Series, Thursday, 5 September, Red Sox versus Cubs at Comiskey Park. But wait, I hear you say, why in God's name are the Cubs playing home games at Comiskey? Well, I'm glad you asked. And it's because it was felt that the capacity of Wrigley Field, which was known as Weigman Park in those days, hell of a damn shame that name didn't stick, was insufficient for World Series games, so the White Sox agreed to let the Cubs use their place in exchange for a cut at the gate. Now, what kind of climate is the 1918 World Series being played in? Well, a pretty optimistic one, as it turns out, which is, of course, rather ironic, considering the events that would transpire at the very same ballpark a mere 12 months later. But things were trending pretty positively over on the Western Front. It looked like the Great War, or the World War, if you prefer. It didn't have its own Roman numeral back then. That it was going to be over sooner rather than later. It looked like the good guys were probably going to win, fingers crossed. I mean, win in the sense of we have pushed the filthy Hun savages back across their own borders, and we damn well hope they stay there. And consequently, it looks like maybe we can expect our boys home for Christmas. I mean, except for the 116,000 of our finest young men who will lie buried on those foreign shores forever. The point being, this all cannot happen soon enough, and there is a bit of patriotic fervor in the air. Bruce Springsteen might call it disgustingly jingoistic and threaten to sue somebody, who knows? And as it happens, when the World Series begins, the news has just begun to arrive of the Allied victory at the Second Battle of Lys, in which the American 2nd Corps, 27th and 30th Divisions, formed the spearhead that smashed the enemy salient and sent Kaiser Bill's boys a-running. And two other U.S. divisions, the 37th and the 91st, also played a pivotal role in that campaign under the operational command, little known fact, of the King of Belgium. If I had told you American troops fought under the command of a foreign king in the 20th century, would you have believed me? Come on, be honest. So, Game 1 is a closely run thing through the first 6.5 innings, a real pitcher's duel. I mean, it is the dead ball era, after all, between a couple of lefties. Hippo Vaughn for the Cubs. No, not Ricky Vaughn. No, not an actual hippo. There, that's the one. And some youngster out of Maryland named George Herman Ruth, pitching for the Red Sox. And I'm sure that young man has a very bright future, just as long as he watches that waistline and doesn't get to carousing too much. The game's only run has come in the top of the 4th, when Stuffy McInnes hit an opposite field dying quail of a single down the left field line to score Dave Sheen from second, who had led off the inning with a walk. And damn it, Hippo, how many times have I told you about those leadoff walks? They bite you in your hippo ass every time. So it's a real nail-biter as we reach the 7th inning stretch, ladies and gentlemen. But Harry Frizzy, the Red Sox owner, he has got a special treat for the people today. But wait, I hear you say, if we're in the White Sox's ballpark and the Cubs are the home team, why is Boston's owner paying for special treats? Well, because Harry Frizzy wants to show that he is a great American patriot, by God. This is how sports owners used to act before they were all idiots. And yes, I do realize I have left myself open there for a very easy comeback about No Nanette and that aforementioned George Ruth kid, but you're better than that. And besides, it is counterfactual to the actual history. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and show your appreciation for Mr. Harry Frizzy, a man who is so patriotic he shits red, white, and blue, who has arranged at very great expense our very special 7th inning stretch musical guest. So please give a warm Comiskey Park welcome to the one and only U.S. Navy Band. And no, they didn't parachute in like the Leapfrogs, although that would have been awesome. But sadly, parachutes didn't exist yet. At least, not the kind that can save you from death or grievous injury. Just ask that Eiffel Tower guy, he'll tell you all about it. After you scrape him off the pavement. But they did march in from center field, which was a pretty impressive sight if you live in 1918. But here is another crucially important thing about 1918 that we can't leave out of the story. We have no national anthem in 1918. When we need to play a patriotic song at some event, we usually pick one of the marches of John Philip Sousa, and those are all instrumentals, so they don't really invite any sort of audience participation. We are still years away from God Bless America being written. You've got Yankee Doodle Dandy, but that's got kind of a frivolous air to it. You've got the Battle Hymn of the Republic, but most people still associate that one fairly strongly with the Civil War, or the War of Dastardly Yankee Aggression for our rebel viewers. So, we need a patriotic song that's appropriate for a full brass band, something most people in 18 will know the words to. something we can use to build a rousing crescendo of nationalistic fervor that explodes in a mass public orgasm of Americana. Now, most people at this point would probably say, America the Beautiful. It's a no-brainer. It's the safest pick. But Harry Frizzy goes in a different direction. You know why? Because America the Beautiful is a nice song and all, but it's more of an abstract thing. It is about the country itself. It's a bird's eye view of the whole land, just like the words say, from sea to shining sea. It's not about something that all of us here in this ballpark today can all look at together. But you know what song is? The Star Spangled Banner. So that's the song the band will strike up, and we will all sing to the flag together as it waves high above right center field. And you'll notice I didn't say stand and sing. Standing for the flag wasn't really a thing that people did back in those days. The only time everyone in a ballpark would stand in unison would be if the president or the governor was present and he was arriving or leaving, as of course famously happened with William Howard Taft at Griffith Stadium in Washington in 1913. But here we are in the seventh inning stretch, so obviously some portion of the crowd is going to be standing and stretching or walking around or whatever, and some of them will remain seated just as they do today. But the idea of everyone standing in solemn attention and facing the flag while singing a song about the flag and it's played, that was totally unheard of right up until game one of the 1918 series. And we don't quite know whether it happened organically or it was all part of the plan. The story goes that there was a young man in a Marine uniform sitting behind the first base dugout, and when the Navy band struck up the first notes of the Star Spangled Banner, that young man instantly snapped to attention and rendered the sharpest salute that anybody had ever seen. And so impressed was the rest of the crowd by that display that they, too, came to attention and also faced the flag. Now, how true is the thing about the young Marine? It's impossible to know, really. Sports writers had fanciful imaginations in those days, and their testimony is really all we have to go on. Is it possible the story is 100% face level legit? Yes. Is it possible it was a little bit true, but also a work, like in wrestling, where they dress up a guy in street clothes and have him pretend to be a fan and interfere in the match? Yes, that is possible too. Is it possible there was no young man in a Marine uniform at all and some writer invented him and the crowd's reaction was totally spontaneous and organic? Again, that's also a Big 10-4. But sometimes those little mysteries are the best part of the things that enter our national folklore, aren't they? But what's beyond all dispute is that everyone who was present on the day was very moved and impressed by what they had witnessed and participated in, and they felt it was something that warranted being turned into a tradition and ultimately becoming a part of our national civic liturgy. The ovation that erupted at the end of the song was variously described as thunderous and rapturous, and it lasted so long, everybody forgot to count how many minutes had gone by. The next season, one by one, every club in both leagues started having a band play the Star Spangled Banner during the seventh inning stretch. Within a few years, it was decided it would be best to move the anthem to before the start of the game, because in some cities, without naming any names, some fans were too well lubricated by the middle of the seventh to properly observe the solemnity of the ritual. And it only takes barely a dozen years until, as a direct result of having been played one time on one day during one baseball game, Francis Scott Key's Little Ditty was duly proclaimed the official national anthem of these United States of America. The Red Sox held on to win game one that day. Babe Ruth made that 1-0 lead hold up, wound up with a 6-hit complete game shutout. Also, brief aside, I say Babe Ruth is the best left-handed pitcher in American League history, and if you disagree, I will fight you. Now, Ruth would pick up another win in Game 4, giving up 2 runs in the 8th after opening the series with 16 straight shutout innings, and he batted 6th that day, fun fact. So we can see kind of which direction the wind is probably blowing. Within 2 years, he would be a former Red Sox and a former pitcher, and that's something that often gets lost in your best player ever discussions, namely the fact that Babe Ruth was not an everyday player for the first 5 years of his career, and he still hit 714 home runs. In other words, that dude was putting up video game numbers half a century before video games were a thing. The Red Sox win the series in 6 games, and it is famously their last world championship before the whole curse of the Bambino thing, which lasts, 80-something years. And they broke the hex in 2004, though. Then they lost their congenital inferiority complex, and now their fans are more insufferable than ever, so clearly everything turned out fine. And in closing, what is the best and most wonderfully American thing about our national pastime? Well, consider this. The bases are arranged in a square. We call it a diamond. And when a guy hits a home run, we say he circled the bases. And how can you not love a game like that? Thanks very much indeed for watching. Have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.